Tonight, I'm telling 3 camping stories that were never meant to be shared. One camper picked a site that wasn't on the map. One heard their name called from the dark and answered. One watched the campground count how many people were left. None of them thought they were the last one awake. If you're watching this alone, you might want to keep the lights on.
The campsite that wasn't on the map. The campground brochure said Site 12 was secluded. That should have been my first warning. I arrived just before sunset, tires crunching over gravel that hadn't been touched in years. The ranger station was closed, its windows dark and dusty, a faded "Welcome Campers" sign hanging crooked above the door. No other cars, no voices, just wind combing through the trees like fingers through hair. Site 12 sat at the very end of the road, past a bend that blocked it from view. The moment I parked, my phone lost service. No bars, no GPS. The forest swallowed sound in a way that felt deliberate, like it was leaning in to listen. The campsite itself looked wrong. The fire pit was cold, but the ashes were fresh. A log bench had deep grooves in it, like something heavy had been dragged across the wood again and again. There were footprints in the dirt, barefoot, circling the tent pad. Too many, overlapping, as if people had walked there in loops for hours. I told myself it was left over from earlier campers. I always tell myself things like that. Night came fast, faster than it should have. By the time my tent was up, the forest had gone silent. Not peaceful silence, empty silence. No insects, no owls. Even the wind had stopped. When I snapped a stick for the fire, the sound cracked through the air like a gunshot, echoing far longer than it should have. I sat by the fire and ate from a can, staring into the trees. The darkness between trunks looked thick, layered like curtains. Somewhere far off, something moved. Not walking, sliding. At 9:17 p.m., I heard footsteps. Slow, careful, bare feet on dirt. I stood and called out, "Hello!" The footsteps stopped immediately. No reply. I waited, heart thudding, fire beside me. After a full minute, I sat back down, embarrassed by my own nerves. Then the footsteps started again, closer this time, always just out of sight, circling the campsite. I shined my flashlight into the woods. The beam caught nothing but tree trunks and the occasional glint of eyes far too high off the ground to be deer. At 10:02 p.m., someone whispered my name. Not shouted, not called, whispered, like they were right behind my ear. I spun around, flashlight slicing the darkness. Nothing. My tent stood exactly where I'd left it, but the zipper was open. I knew for a fact I'd closed it. I zipped it shut again, my hands shaking now, and climbed inside. The thin fabric felt useless, a suggestion of safety at best. I lay there listening to my own breathing, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. That's when the scratching started. Not on the ground, on the tent. Long, deliberate drags of fingernails across nylon, slow enough that I could follow every inch of it. Whatever was outside wasn't trying to get in, it was exploring, learning the shape of me through the fabric. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. A voice spoke inches from my face, muffled by the tent wall. "Still inside?" I bolted upright and screamed, kicking my way out of the tent and stumbling into the firelight. The campsite was empty, no footsteps, no shapes, just the fire burning low and my tent swaying gently as if something had just stepped away from it. That's when I noticed the extra tents. There were 3 of them now, arranged in a wide circle around my fire. Old canvas tents, sagging and stained, their entrances facing inward. None of them had been there before. I grabbed my keys and ran for the car. The road was gone. Where the gravel path should have been was forest, thick, ancient,
trees packed so tightly together there wasn't even room to squeeze through. The campsite had closed in on itself, swallowed its own exit. Behind me, one of the canvas tents unzipped. Something crawled out. It stood slowly, joints popping, skin pale and stretched too tight over a frame that once was human. Its face was wrong, features blurred like a reflection in rippling water. When it smiled, its mouth opened wider than its skull should allow. From inside the other tents came movement, shapes standing, breathing. The thing closest to me tilted its head. "You picked an empty site. We've been waiting." I ran. The forest shifted as I moved, paths folding away from me, trees sliding together. No matter how far I ran, the campsite stayed just behind me, firelight flickering through the trunks like an eye that never blinked. I tripped and fell hard, knocking the air from my lungs. When I looked up, I was back at Site 12. My tent was neatly packed, my car sat perfectly parked, the fire pit was clean, no ashes, no footprints. Morning light filtered through the trees. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed everything. Then I saw the brochure on the picnic table. The campground map had changed. Site 12 was no longer labeled secluded. It was labeled occupied. At the bottom, in small print, someone had added a note in handwriting that wasn't mine. "If you wake up here, don't set up camp. You already did." I left without looking back. Weeks later, I checked the park's website. The campground had been permanently closed due to unexplained disappearances. There were comments under the announcement, dozens of them, all saying the same thing. I stayed at Site 12. I heard someone say my name. I woke up and my tent was gone. And one posted just yesterday, "Does anyone know why there are more tents than campsites now?"
The lake that refused to reflect us. We chose the lake because it didn't have a name. It wasn't on the main park map, just a blue oval tucked between contour lines, no label, no campsite markers. The ranger barely looked up when we asked about it. "People don't stay there long," he said, and slid us the permit anyway. 4 of us hiked in before sunset. The trail narrowed until it was barely a suggestion, pine needles packed so tightly they felt padded, like the ground was trying to muffle our steps. When the trees finally opened, the lake sat perfectly still, glassy and black, reflecting the sky so clearly it looked like a hole punched straight through the world. No ripples, no insects, no birds. Our reflections didn't move. I noticed it first when I knelt to fill my bottle. The water showed me crouching there, but when I shifted my weight, the reflection stayed frozen for half a second longer than it should have. "Anyone else seeing this?" I asked. They laughed, told me I was tired, told me water does weird things at dusk. We set up camp anyway. That night, the lake never rippled, even when the wind kicked up. The trees swayed, the tents rustled, the fire cracked. The water stayed smooth. Around midnight, Mark walked down to the shore to wash his hands. I watched his silhouette kneel at the edge. His reflection stood up. It took a step forward on the surface of the lake, then it vanished. Mark came back to the fire pale and quiet. When we asked what happened, he shook his head and said he felt sick, said the water smelled wrong, like metal and old leaves. He didn't sleep. None of us really did. At dawn, the lake looked different, not darker, deeper, like the sky it reflected went on forever, with no bottom. I threw a stone into it. No splash. The stone just disappeared. Emily said we should leave immediately, pack up and go, but when she turned away from the lake, she stopped short. Her shadow was still facing the water. It peeled itself off the ground, slowly like wet paper, and stepped backward into the lake. Emily screamed and collapsed. When we checked her, she was breathing,
but she wouldn't wake up. Her reflection was gone. Not distorted, not blurry, gone. We carried her between us, moving fast now, trail forgotten, just pushing through trees. The forest felt tighter, heavier, like it was leaning in to watch. Behind us, we heard water moving for the first time, sloshing, footsteps, something walking where the lake should have been. When we finally burst back onto the main trail, the sound stopped. Rangers took Emily to the hospital. They said it was exhaustion, dehydration, shock. But when she woke up, she wouldn't look at mirrors. She covered every reflective surface in her apartment, TV screens, windows, phone screens turned face down. She told me why, weeks later, in a whisper. She said when she closes her eyes, she's still standing at the bottom of the lake, looking up, watching herself live her life without her. The park quietly removed the lake from their maps that year. But hikers still find it. They always describe it the same way. A perfect mirror. No ripples. And reflections that don't quite follow.
The campsite that counts you. I went camping to be alone. No friends, no noise, no neighbors pretending a speaker is a personality. Just trees and quiet, and one night where nothing needed anything from me. The campground had exactly 6 sites, all empty when I arrived. The ranger box was unattended, a single clipboard left out with today's date written at the top. Under it, someone had written a number, 6. I didn't think about it. I picked site 4 because it was farthest from the road. The woods pressed in close, branches hanging low, like the trees were tired of standing upright. My phone had no signal, but I liked that. Proof I'd escaped something. By the time my tent was up, the sun was gone. That's when I noticed the number had changed. The clipboard now read 5. I walked back to the entrance, confused. No cars, no engines, no people leaving. The gravel road was untouched. Still, the number stayed at 5. I told myself it meant available sites, someone's weird way of tracking vacancies. It didn't explain why it dropped without anyone leaving, but I was already committed to not thinking too hard. At 9 p.m., a lantern turned on in Site 1. I hadn't heard a car. A few minutes later, another light appeared at Site 2, then Site 3. No voices, no movement, just soft yellow glows, perfectly still, like staged photos. The clipboard changed again. 4. My stomach tightened. I stepped out of my tent and waved my flashlight. No response. The lanterns didn't flicker. They didn't react. They just existed. At 10:17 p.m., something moved between the sites. Not walking. Counting. I heard it muttering under its breath, each word wet and deliberate. 1. Still 1. I ducked into my tent and zipped it shut, heart pounding. Through the thin fabric, I saw shadows pass, stop, linger. The clipboard dropped to 3. A scream cut through the campground, short, sudden, choked off like someone had been unplugged. One of the lanterns went dark. I didn't sleep. At some point near dawn, the muttering stopped. The shadows retreated. The forest exhaled. When I stepped out, there were only 2 lanterns left. Mine wasn't one of them. The clipboard read 2. I ran for my car. The road was still there, mercifully. I didn't question it. I didn't look back. Later, safe and shaking, I checked the park's website. The campground was still listed. No warnings, no closures. But someone had uploaded a photo in the reviews. It was the entrance sign. The clipboard showed a fresh number, 1. And in the comments, someone asked, "Is this place first come, first served?"